Welcome back to the foundry to part 3 of Project Brut, my little mini project where I'm getting my truck ready for a particular job I've got coming up. And today we're going to set the bed back on it. We're going to cut out for the gooseneck ball. We're going to wire our lights back in and address a few other small things. And it's going to be ready to rock and roll. While this is the final segment, it's not the last time you're going to see this truck. I'm going to be using it. Plus, there's future repairs I plan on doing down the road. And so I'm going to bring that as well. But for today, we're going to do what I said and see how everything goes. And if it's ready, I plan on putting this thing to work pretty quick. So let's get it done. All right, so I got the bed set back on here. And if you wanted to see footage of that, I apologize, but it is freaking hot out here. And my camera kept overheating and shutting off. So I'm going to do this real quick before it happens again. So the question was, would we have clearance for the hitch? And drum roll, please. The answer is yes. We've got plenty of clearance, and I don't have it bolted down yet. It's just sitting up here, so it'll drop down another 1/4 inch or so, and we'll be just fine. So before I tighten up the bolts, I went around and I wanted to check all my gaps and make sure the bed was on straight, because there's some degree of you can adjust it to some extent. I got about a finger width there. Got about a finger there. Now this isn't ever going to match up just perfect, because this bed has been hit in the side before, long before I got the truck. And so it's a little bit tweaked, but as it's sitting right now, it is exactly where I had it when I pulled it off. And yeah, we can see it maybe a little better over here. We got plenty of room for our hitch. Now up in there, we can't really see it, but I've still got to take a hole saw and drill out for the hitch, for the ball. And so my plan there is I'm going to get underneath with a center punch, because the center of that hitch is hollow, and I'm going to reach up in there and punch it as best I can if I've got room. And hopefully it'll make a dimple up here, and I'll know exactly where center is. And I'm going to take a hole saw and just drill that thing out, and should be good to go. So I'm going to get this thing pulled up in the shop out of the hot sun. It's 90 some odd degrees out here, and get it in there and get started. Truck's back in the shop. These are the Rawson boxes I was going to put on it, but that's out the window because of the gooseneck hitch. And I think I've changed my mind on the cross box as well, because I'm going to have to carry 2 300-gallon totes back here initially. So I don't think I'm going to have room for that with the tailgate up. Now, I won't be carrying those when I'm pulling the gooseneck, obviously. But I think I'm going to hold up on the toolbox until I see how things go, and then if I need it, I'll put it on there. So what I've done thus far is I got the bed tightened down, and I've rotated the tires, and I have checked the brakes like I said I was going to do, and I found something. I found the cause of my brakes backing off, and it's just the passenger side. The driver's side looked great, and what's going on is the rear axle seal on this passenger side is leaking slightly, and it has saturated my brake shoes and caused them to start grabbing. Apparently, I haven't noticed the wheel lock up, but a lot of times I've got some weight on the truck and I may not have noticed. But essentially it's taken those fairly new shoes and wore them slap out is what the issue is. And it's full of grease and gunk, and it's caused my adjuster cable to fall off. So I'm kind of in a time crunch. they're not metal to metal, but they're worn down significantly. So I'm going to have to do a rear brake job. But for the time being, I think I'm going to pretend I didn't see that. I found another little issue. I think I got a motor mount that needs to be changed. And I'm probably just going to pretend I didn't see that either for the time being. You always, on these old trucks, the more you dig into them, the more you find that they need. So I'm going to focus on what's critical right now. And that is finishing up the gooseneck hitch project. And so what I've done here is I was going to get underneath it with a punch and come up through the middle of that hitch and dimple the bed so I'd know where to drill. And I got to thinking, well, the hitch was pretty much butted up to the bottom of the bed when I got the bed bolted down. So I just took a hammer and hit around here, and it made a perfect 4-inch circle where that hitch is located. So then I took the tape measure and I measured and got center and dimpled it with a center punch. And then I'm going to use this hole saw. Now this is a 3-inch hole saw, I think. The hitch is 4 inches. I wouldn't mind if this was 3.5. That'd be better, but I couldn't find one. So I'm just going to use what I got. 3-inch will be fine. It really just has to be big enough for that ball to slip through there. And so I think this will work great. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go ahead and drill that out. And then I've still got to wire up my lights on my headache rack and clean up in the cab a little bit. And this thing's going to be about ready to go. I will address the brakes and the motor mount later, but I'm going to limp them along right now and just kind of get me started anyway. It's a very uneven cut surface, and it's making it quite difficult. My drill bit fell through. This uneven cutting surface is making it real difficult. I'm already through over here, but I'm just starting to get right there, so I'm just going to have to do the best I can. All right, one more little spot. There we go. Alright. Man, that's almost absolutely perfect. That's perfect. See, there's not a big gap between the sheet metal and the hitch for stuff to get caught under if you're sliding things in and out of the bed. So, yeah, I'm real happy with that. Let's find the ball. Like so. Yeah, that worked out great. For safety chains, there's U-bolts that go in this hitch on either side, and I don't have those U-bolts. I didn't get them with the hitch. I got the hitch secondhand. So I'll put them in later. So to turn that ball over by yourself, since the lever's in the wheel well, you just come down here beforehand, grab this lever, pull it out, and go toward the front of the truck, and it holds it for you. Then you can come up here, if I don't trip and fall. Take the ball out, flip it over, then go back to your lever and release it. And now you have full access to your bed. You can slide cargo in and out without that ball right in the way. Now my OBS F250 that I named Hulk, it had a gooseneck hitch that was the ball basically just laid over. It had a little flap of steel you picked up. The ball laid down in a little trough, and you closed the lever. And that thing was so handy. There wasn't any getting out of the back of it and going over and digging around in a muddy wheel well to pull a lever and all that bunch of mess. But you know, I'll work with what I got. I think this is a pretty good hitch. All right, let's get these lights wired back up. We got 2 facing back and 1 out each side. But before we do that, I want to tell you a little something about these tools that I'm using, because this can really make a job, you know, enjoyable or a pain in the neck. Well, it's raining and we're in a tin building, so you have to forgive the noise, but so when you're doing electrical stuff, the worst thing is when you have substandard crimping and cutting tools. It just makes the job awful, especially if you're in a confined space. You get it all together and it doesn't work because your splice didn't work out, you know. So this is probably your most common cheap pair of crimpers and splicers, and or strippers, I should say, and they're just junk. I mean, honestly, this is what you use if you're in a bind and there's nothing else available. So I never use those. These are super handy when they work. But this is cheap Harbor Freight unit here, and it's like $10. Basically, use it once, it breaks, and you throw it away. But if you could find these that are really good quality, because these catch the wire this way, and so you can get in some tight places with this, and you're not opening up the handle and trying to get in there to splice, you know, because there's no room for that mess. Then you've got these work really well. I don't know. These work pretty good. They're not my favorite, but they do work pretty good. The only complaint I've had with these is they don't always grab the wire real good. These are my all-time favorite, and this is what I'm going to be using today to strip wire. It grabs the wire, strips it. Doesn't matter what size, it'll do just any size that'll fit in there. And then you've got a crimper tool and a cutter, but you know, the problem with that is it's in the handle. I don't like crimpers that are in the handle, because you've got to get this whole mechanism up in the tight space where you're working, and that's a pain in the neck. So that's where these come in. These have the crimping and cutting tool out on the end. So if you're in a tight space, you can just ease the end of the tool in there instead of, you know, the whole thing, and get the handle in there, and there's no room for that. Nobody's got time for that. So for today, I'm going to use my 2 favorite tools. I'm going to use these for stripping, these for cutting and crimping, and we're going to put this, wire these lights back up, and I'm just going to use some basic butt splices. You know, the rule followers are going to say, oh, you gotta solder and heat shrink and all that mess. In some environments, they're right. That is the best way to do it. But I'm in a kind of a tight space between the headache rack and the cab, and I don't have a lot of room for soldering and all that mess. Plus, I use these on these exact lights, on this exact truck, on this exact headache rack, and they held up excellent for the last 8 years. So I'm going back with them. So that's that. All right, so I'm basically going under the truck, reading my tags. I tie a wire to it, pull them up to where I can get to them. Sorry about the noise. And so watch this. Watch how these things work. So I got an outside housing, sheath, whatever you want to call it, and 2 wires on the inside. So I'm going to start with those. Man, those work good. Saves me so much time, and you don't cut into your inside wires. Then you're ready to boom and boom. Give the ends a little twist. Drop them in there. It's out on the end of the tool, so I don't have to get the handle in, you know, like that. It's out on the end of the tool. You just feed that in there, like so, and crimp it. And don't be scared to crimp it. You want to be able to snatch on that and your splice not fly off of there. That's a solid splice. it'll last forever. All right, I got them wired up. The wires are tied up, zip tied nice and neat, so they won't get snagged on anything, and they're pretty much out of sight. So I'm gonna jump in there, turn them on, and see if everything works. We'll start with these back here. Oh yeah, I'm gonna hit that corner light over there, passenger side. Yep, now we're gonna try that one. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're good. Now I'm going to bring you in the cab with me. I want to show you my switch setup. Alright. Well, the light in here is awful. So anyway, I got 3 switches here. That goes out to the passenger side light. That one is both rear headache rack lights. That's the driver's side light. And this up here is my rear bumper lights. Now this toggle switch here is pretty interesting. That goes to the torque converter in the transmission. I wired that in there to give me control over converter lockup. And so when I'm towing and I'm not going to be making a bunch of stops, I can turn that on and it puts the torque converter in full lockup all the time. Even when you let off the throttle, it just stays locked up like a manual transmission. I can put it in the middle position and it takes the converter completely out of lockup regardless of what the computer's telling it to do. And then down here where I've got it is computer controlled lockup. So it's basically exactly stock, the stock setting for your transmission. But that's pretty handy if you're towing with an E4OD. And then over here I've got, that's the switch for my light bar on the front. And of course I've got my spotlight here. And it works as far, yeah. So, sorry, this camera is very, how should I say, awkward to carry around. But anyway, that's my switch setup. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I've got a new fire extinguisher to hang right here. I got a new mount that's going to go there, and my jumper cables, and I got a water hose and stuff I'm going to tie up to the headache rack to get them out of the bed. So we'll do that next. All right, got the lights finished up, the old extinguisher up there, and my cables and water hose. If those cables were valuable, I wouldn't display them like that, but they don't work that well anyway. So I kicked the hubcaps back on, rinsed her off, did a little cleaning on the interior. Not too bad for an old truck, but it's pretty much ready to go for its basic duties. It's going to need a few little things. Like I said, the rear brakes, the motor mount, but that'll be, I'm going to limp it along until my other truck's ready. And if it lasts that long, hopefully it will. So now we're going to move on to some equipment. Oh, I also went ahead and pulled the decals off of it. I'm not going to need to take it in the plants anymore. So I don't need those on there for DOT scrutiny and all that. So we're going to move on to some equipment, and I'm going to reveal what this has all been for, hopefully pretty soon. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, geez. Boy. Ow! I've never used this drill before. So that's the end of that. I think they sold me a bad drill. This thing is so loose. And I don't know who Wallace is. There's Wallace written all over this drill.